This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, good evening. Tonight is Wednesday, August 28th, 2024. This is the public meeting for the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Easthampton. We'll call the meeting to order. Is there anyone in the audience or online interested in speaking for a topic that is not on this evening's meeting agenda?
If anyone online would like to, you can use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen. Not seeing any.
All right, seeing none. We do not have any meetings from our prior meetings.
No minutes.
Okay. At this point, I would like to introduce Matt Swisher as a new member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Welcome, sir. Welcome. Congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
All right. And at this point, we'll call the hearing for Grayson DeWitt and Laura Fisher DeWitt, a continued hearing from April 24th, 2024, June 26, 2024, July 10th, 2024. Seeking a special permit for the construction of a new garage where a pre-existing non-conforming garage currently exists under section 11.12 of the Easthampton zoning ordinance. The property is located at 14 Norton Street, map 152, lot 28. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
My name is Attorney John McLaughlin. If I could use this rostrum, that would be great.
Good, Matt.
All right. First off, I have this question. Are there 5 of you this evening?
There's one online.
Yep.
And 4 of us here.
That's great. I was told there was only going to be 4, so there's 5. For a special permit, that's better for me. I like that. Thank you. All right. I represent Laura Fisher DeWitt and Grayson DeWitt. They own 14 Norton Street in Easthampton. There is a garage at 14 Norton Street. It's very old, and it has what's known as prior non-conformities. Just, you know, whenever I say prior non-conforming rights or prior non-conforming structure, that is what used to be called grandfather. It's like grandfather rights or grandfather structure. We now use the term prior non-conforming, right? But they have a building that is got a two prior non-conformities. Number one, it's very close to the back line, really close, within 2 feet to the back line. And it's also very close to the side, very close to the side. And the building itself is antiquated. It has a flat roof. If you read my prior memorandums, you can see that it's kind of ugly. It doesn't fit with the architecture of this nice neighborhood. It doesn't fit structurally. It's an eyesore. It's still functional, but it's not perfect. But they want to rebuild it, and they want to rebuild it slightly taller so that it can have a normal roof instead of a flat. And they're going to be building it almost exactly on the footprint where it was. So that's why we're here today. They want to put a new garage in. They want to take down the old garage, put in a new garage, and make it slightly taller to give it a normal roof instead of the very ugly and antiquated flat. All right. Right non-conforming rights in Massachusetts are established by what is known as the zoning act. Section 6 of the zoning act. It basically sets out what are the guaranteed property rights any property owner has in Massachusetts, rights that cannot be taken away by a town through an ordinance or a city, a town through a bylaw or a city through an ordinance. There's some guaranteed prior non-conforming rights that property owners have in Massachusetts. And it may seem hard to believe, but when it comes to property rights in Massachusetts, Massachusetts is not in my backyard. I'm in the state when it comes to 1 and 2 family structures. When it comes to 1 and 2 family structures, they give a lot of protection to the homeowner. You know, an abutter can't scream, I want you to build it there, or I don't like the way it looks. For one and two family structures, it's very different. The neighbors can't act as the veto power over what you want to build on your own property. I've set forth in my memorandum the statute, I've detailed the statute, and I've cited case law that makes it clear that when it comes to one and two family structure, and you want to rebuild something on your one and two family structure, you're not at the beck and call of your neighbors. You can do what you want to do, so long as you do two things. You don't create a new nonconformity, and the building that you're creating is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the one you're getting rid of. That's the test. Okay, that is the test. And in fact, the language about how property rights are protected for one and two family people, it's very different than commercial or industrial or multi-family, very, very different. A court in 2020 set forth exactly what the language means. I'll tell you exactly what they said. Such structures can be modified, extended, or reconstructed as of right, so long as the extended, altered structure does not increase its non-conforming nature. Reading that, meaning they could build without any finding from you if they didn't increase the non-conformity. A building inspector on this church could have given that. Moreover, when the changes do increase the non-conforming nature of the protected residence, they can still be undertaken by special permit, so long as the permit granting authority finds that the proposed modifications will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conformity. Setting forth the test. The test is, did we increase the non-conformity? I assume we didn't. We're not building any closer to the line, sideline. We're not building any closer to the rear line. We're building it slightly taller to put on a new roof. That's it. I don't think if we increase it, it's not significant. It's any non-conformity. I don't think we've increased any of it. But we're here for the permit, and real test is see what we're building, compare that to what's there, and is what we're building going to be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than what is there now? Okay. Now, the other thing to bear in mind is that, which I mentioned in my memorandum, my first memorandum, was that the bylaws of a town or the ordinance of the city cannot take away any of the rights that are guaranteed under the statute as construed by the 2020 case that I recited. So the statutes that you have, I believe, were written before 2020 when the case I just cited was established. You may have provisions in there that might not gel perfectly, but you can construe them so that they're in conformity with the state statute, and that my client's guaranteed state protected rights aren't hurt. For example, your statute, you talked about significantly intensified a non-conformity, and how one way you can construe your statute is to say if you significantly intensify, but the building is still not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, you could deny it. I think if you did that, you would be wrong compared to the case law that was written that came about after your statute was written. So I don't think you want to do that. And most importantly, I don't think we're going to ever get there, because I think I've got witnesses here tonight that I think by the time you hear the witnesses, you can find when we have not significantly intensified the existing nonconformities, the side yard violation and the rear yard violation. We have not created any new nonconformities, and the new building is not substantially more detrimental than the old flat roof building that's there. So you can just make those findings, and then we don't have to deal with any issues about how the ordinance was written prior to 2020. Now, there's another alleged problem with your ordinance that an opposition, that when you say the opposition, it's the written opposition. There may be others, but the written opposition has been mainly from Ms. Gagnon and Mr. Amos. So when I say the opposition, I'm just going to refer to them as the opposition, right? They claim that because your ordinance, when it talks about 1 or 2 family structures, doesn't say rebuild, you can't rebuild. Okay, that nobody can ever rebuild an old building for 1 or 2 family. You can't. Is what they're arguing. They're saying it just says alter or amend, or it doesn't use the word rebuild. But in your ordinance, you have a definitional section, and in that definitional section, you define alter to include rebuild. It says alteration means rebuild. So just by reading your bylaw as a whole, all the different parts of it, then it should be clear that someone who owns an old 1 or 2 family can rebuild on that property. They don't have to just fix the old building, okay? Now, so I see that the main job this evening is to consider whether that garage is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, the new garage, when compared to the old flat roof antiquated garage. And I also want to bring something up because there is opposition. There's no such thing as for 1 and 2 families. It's very different. There's no such thing as an abutter's veto. Someone as an abutter may have problems with a property owner wants to build their prior non-conforming property. They may have problems with it. They may not like it. They may say, I don't want things to change. I want it to be like it's always been. But Massachusetts gives property owners rights. They don't have a veto. I cited to a case in my memorandum where all the abutters were against it. And the board still said, this new construction is not going to be substantially detrimental to the neighborhood, whether you like it or not. And that's what you might have to do tonight. There may be some abutters or some neighbors who don't want it, but it's really in conformity with the law, the application. So, I mean, the gist of it is we're rebuilding an old garage, okay? And we're putting in a new garage, almost exactly the same footprint, but slightly taller. And that is to give us a real roof. The real roof will do a couple things. It'll have better qualities pertaining to snowfall and rain on the building, and it will look like everybody else's. It won't be a sore thumb in the neighborhood. It will be good for the neighborhood. It actually be better. As one of the next door neighbor, a butter, who the next door, the one who's on the side where this building already protrudes, said that she thought it would be a betterment. She thought it would be better for the neighborhood. So please keep that in mind. Okay. Now, one of the issues is that there's something that's kind of different, and that is that after I filed my memorandum, I just sort of spelled out to you the gist of my memorandum, except I can go, the finding that's set forth in the Massachusetts statute says that this board has to make the finding about comparing the old building to the new building. The statute itself, which is 48 section 6, doesn't say how to do this. Doesn't tell us procedurally how to go about doing that. So what most cities and towns do is they say, well, let's make it a type of special permit. So that's what most cities and towns do. That's what Easthampton did. Which means that we must look at all this other special permit criteria. It has nothing to do with single family garage, but they are there. And I just want to assure you that if you look at each and every one of the special permit criteria, we still abide. The first one says that, we're going to be okay with our in conforming to rules and regulations. And well, that's kind of an unusual thing, because what we're doing is dealing with a non-conformity. So if you give the permit, we are conforming. The next one says protection of city amenities and abutting properties to minimize any detrimental or offensive uses or destruction of unique and important scenic or historical features on the site. That's not an issue here. We don't have any unique or historical features on our site. minimize traffic impacts, of the proposed development of adjacent highways or roads, maximize the convenience and safety of vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site. It's a one-car garage. Like I said, most of these things were written for much, much bigger projects, multi-families, industrial, things of that nature. Adequacy of the methods of disposal of sewage. We don't have any plumbing or heat in this building. There's nothing involved with that. Adequate means of protecting wetlands. There's no wetlands near the property. Mitigation of adverse impacts on the city's resources, not really relevant. Provisions for off-street loading, again, not really relevant. Applications to integrate the development into the existing landscape with design features such as vegetative barriers, retention of open spaces. Again, we're just reconstructing the garage that's already there. Will have no effect on those items. Minimization of the area of existing vegetation to be removed. We're not removing any. The consistency of the development with respect to setbacks, areas, place, parking. Again, we're just reconstructing a garage, and the setbacks are wrong. That's why we're here. Okay? Adequacy of measures to prevent pollution of groundwater. Not relevant. Adequacy of methods to ensure we're useful, not constitute a nuisance by reasons of unacceptable air or water pollution. That's not going to happen. Okay, so you do have this as a special permit. To the extent that any of the special permit criteria apply, we abided by them. But really, this is a finding. This is a finding under Section 6 of Chapter 48 of the Massachusetts Zoning Act. That's really what this is. Okay, so what happened after we filed was there was a new memorandum just filed last week. I don't know if it was Thursday or Friday. I was on vacation last week. I'm giving you a new memorandum to reply to everything that was filed at the end of last week. I'm sorry. I just got it myself on Monday because I was on vacation, and admittedly, I don't read my emails when I'm on vacation. So I didn't get this until last week, but I have gone through it. Each and every issue. There is 14 or 15 issues, none of which have good legal merit, none. But I can go through them with you because there is this new memorandum that I sent you electronically this morning, and I've given you a hard copy today. The gist of it is this. I mean, one of the overreaching things about this is we initially had a plan. It all comes down to something. Retaining wall. Okay, retaining wall is a big issue here. Our back neighbors, okay, the opposition, they have a retaining wall on 6 feet behind the garage. Okay, and they had filed an opposition to the application before I even did my memorandum with an engineer, a guy by the name of Mr. Rainville. Mr. Rainville said two things in his engineering. One, he said that if you're doing heavy construction, with heavy equipment right by the back of the building, to tear out, it's a little bit confusing. Initially, we were going to tear down the building, tear out the foundation, put in a new foundation, and build a new building. Okay? Mr. Rainville saw two problems with that. One problem, he said, was if you go through the physical construction, ripping out the foundation and putting in a new one, that might cause a vibration that could maybe cause a damage to the retaining wall 6 feet away. My engineer would say it never would, but at least that's what he said, maybe. Okay. The other issue was he said that if you're going to take out the old foundation and put in a new one, you don't have enough space to do that because your workers are going to have to go onto our property because the property line is less than 2 feet away. So when my clients heard that, they went through concerted effort and expense. They hired an engineer, Mr. Smith, who will speak to me, okay? And Mr. Smith came up with a plan. And the plan is, we're leaving the property. We're leaving the foundation back, that part that they were worried about is going to stay. It's going to stay. We're not going to have big equipment doing that. We're not going to trespass on the property. And he's got a plan that should give no danger to the retaining wall and have no trespass. I've also got the contractor here tonight who will testify that we're not going to trespass. So anyone who's still talking about there being a problem with the retaining wall or a problem with trespass has to respond to the engineering report. I know that the opposition has said that they don't believe it, they don't want it, they don't like it, but well, you know, Mr. Smith's going to explain this to you tonight, how he is doing this project. And it's science, math, and engineering. That's what it is. You can't just stand your feet and say, I don't like it. If there's no danger to your retaining wall, there's no danger. I mean, you can't just believe that there's danger. I need some engineer to tell me Mr. Smith is wrong before I'm going to believe a statement like that. I mean, there is none. That's another thing. When I wrote this thing today, I said that the opposition should have received Mr. Smith's report. I think I said June 30th. That was wrong. If you recall, we were supposed to have a hearing with you much earlier in the summer. And Mr. Smith's report wasn't ready. He was going to bring it to the hearing. I filed all the other exhibits, but he was going to bring it to the hearing. There was no hearing because there was no quorum. So it took him a couple of days to get that to me. In the meantime, Ms. Gagnon had said she wanted the engineering report because she was going to give it to her engineer to analyze. I don't see that. We gave it to her on July the 3rd. We gave it to Mr. Amos on July the 3rd. But I don't see any report from their engineer. In their opposition that they filed last week, they said they did not retain him. Did they not retain him? Because he said something, I don't have a good argument against Mr. Smith. We don't know. But that should, Mr. Chair, I hope you make such inquiries of the opponents on that issue. I mean, because that's what's going on. I mean, so what happens if the opposition filed a new document last week? Much of it is based upon two contentions. Number one, they're saying you can't rebuild. You can rebuild in this town. You can. And number two, that they're worried about the retaining wall. But their worries are not science, not math, not engineering. That's what this board should deal with. And I also want to make it clear, it's not. This isn't an election. They've got more people in opposition now. But I think those people have heard from the opposition that there's a problem, we're worried about a retaining wall. Indeed, if you read some of the written statements that were filed, they talk about the retaining wall. Until there's an engineer that says Mr. Smith is wrong, the retaining wall is not an issue. But that's what's going on. Where they're saying, my retaining wall might fall down. Well, I don't want that to happen. People will sign up in opposition to that. You know, and also, there's the issue of one of them, and there was even a statement from somebody who was a contractor. Let me get his name. That is somewhat weird. I mean, I don't know exactly what's wrong with it, but there's something unusual about it because Corbin Ciccone, I think was the gentleman's name, when he was writing about why he was against it. This is supposedly his letter to you. It says, most of the space between the structure and the retaining wall is our property. Did he write that? I mean, or did somebody write it for him and he signed it? I don't know. Maybe he made a mistake and used the word our property when he was writing a letter of objection. But it sounds at least something that the chair might want to make inquiry about. Okay, so there's a lot of things that came up in the last in the objection that you guys got, that you received last week. One was I had said that we were trying to reach an agreement. We have tried to reach an agreement with these people. They just don't want it to be higher or want it to be moved away from where it is. My client's plans, my client's property puts it there, that's where they want it. And that's where they have a right to keep it there. And we've tried to have them come. I told them I would have all my experts visit, at the site. They could come and we could explain to them how there's no danger to your well. We could explain to them how we're not going to trespass, but they didn't want to talk about it. Their idea of compromise is we have to move it to do it the way they want it. And that's not really common. So we did try. And then she says the original plan was deemed unacceptable by 2 structural engineers. They are the structural engineer, and we did. And indeed, their structural engineer, one of the points he made might have been valid. He said that to take out the wall, which we're leaving now, okay, to take out the wall, we're leaving, we would have might have had to gone onto their property to do that. So that was one reason that we said, okay, we're going to change the plan. We're going to leave it. We're going to build in a way that's going to keep that back foundation there. So, but we never believed that we would have damaged the wall, even under the original plan. And clearly, under this plan, we're not damaging their wall. And they said they had an issue about, I had said in my memorandum how this church had given us a building permit on the 7th of March. And we were getting ready to tear it down when we learned it was revoked. Apparently, BJ had revoked it internally right away, but nobody told my client or the contractor until 4 days before the demolition. So it might have been revoked internally, but nobody told us. We thought we were going to go forward on a special permit. And as I said, on the 23 days, you could probably go forward without a special permit, just a building permit from this church. And she gave it to us, and then it was revoked, but we didn't know until the 14th that it was revoked. Now, the engineering plans, they don't like them. The opposition says that they don't agree with them, they don't believe it, but as far as I know, they're not engineers. And they had an engineer. When they asked for copies, they said they were going to give it to their engineer, but we haven't seen anything from their engineer. So I understand people can be afraid. I would be afraid if somebody's building in a manner that could make a wall fall down near my property. I can understand being afraid, but you have to rely on science. Understand also, there are plenty of places, even in Northampton, where the side lot line is zero. People build major structures next to other structures without damaging those structures all the time. I was born in Hartford. There's buildings right next to each other. People tear down a building and put up a new one all the time. And it doesn't damage those buildings. It costs more from engineering. You have to do it in a different manner. That is all true. But there's no law that says you can't build if it's near something else. It doesn't make any sense. But obviously, Mr. Smith and Mr. Kiter will tell you more about that. And then they talk about the use of the new garage. They're afraid that we're making an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit. There's no heat and no plumbing in this garage. We're not making an apartment. They think that that's our big plan. No heat, no plumbing at all. Drainage from the roof, they said, oh, this isn't going to be better. It is going to be better. The new roof, the sloped flat roof dumps everything right by the retaining. All the water just shoots off on the snow, that's where it goes. The new roof is going to be sloped and have gutters on it, and the contractor will tell you how that's better for their property. So the new building is actually better for their property. They also said, I didn't talk about any retaining walls. I cited, you can see I like cases. My law partner writes the Westlaw best practice series for land use and zoning. So we have a lot of cases in our head. And I did cite to a case that dealt with a retaining wall. In my brief, I cited to the case, and I said the issue of prior non-conforming rights for a garage or a one-family home was at issue, right? Rebuilding the garage. Comstock versus Gloucester. The homeowner was to allow the homeowner to construct a prior non-conforming garage on a one-family home. Sound familiar? That's sort of what we got here. Finding that the reconstructed garage was not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. That's what the board found. And a butter, who, among other things, complained that the reconstructed garage was too tall, and the neighbor expressed concerns about their nearby retaining wall. And there's a parenthetic there that says, take note of the similarity to this case. They appealed to the Superior Court, which upheld the ZBA, and then it was appealed to the Appeals Court. which upheld the Superior Court. I mean, if you build correctly, you can build next door retaining wall. You can. And that's what we are going to do. That's what we want to do, hopefully. You will grant us the permit. They also make reference to the state building code and how building code talk about certain gradage by buildings. First off, if they have a case that says that in any way trumps zoning, I've never seen such a case. They say you got to give someone, and also it would be impossible for there to be zero lot lines all over the corridor, and there are. So there's no bar against doing this. Then there are objections from other citizens. I told you there are more objections now that they went out and got apparently, but I know what they're telling me. And it's not an election. It's not a vote. It's not who's lived here longer, who can get more people from the town that they know. It's not that. It's law. It's science. It's technology. It's not who do you know and how many people can get to sign a paper. That's not justice. They also poo-pooed that the next door neighbor, this LaPlante, who's got the garage next to her, and the new garage will be next to her, in her setback, she said it's going to be beneficial to the neighborhood. And they said, oh, well, she's on a different level, you know, it's not bad. And there's visual detriment. They talk about visual detriment. Now, visual detriment, the back wall is going to be about the same size, okay? But now, the back wall is on a flat roof. Now, once we build it to get a pitched roof, it's going to be about 9 feet taller, okay? So they're saying it hurts their visual detriment. I put photographs in there. Their visual detriment was already pretty bad looking in the back. It was. And now it's, you know, it's maybe a little bit worse, but it was already pretty bad. And even if one abutter suffers a visual detriment, they don't have the right to tell my clients they can't build on their own property. But, you know, there's no abutter's veto. And I'm sorry that they might have slightly less view, but most importantly, that's not a view to the neighborhood. There are times where courts have found that the new building is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. Sometimes, like if a building blocks out the view to the ocean to a whole neighborhood, that might be detrimental to the neighborhood. Or there's a case where there's all these little beach houses that were becoming winterized. Somebody wants to tear it down and build a McMansion out to the side yard, rear yard, backyard, full thing. So that would be the building that stuck out like a sore thumb. That would be the building that didn't fit with the neighborhood. That would be the building that was a substantial detriment to all the other cute little houses. We don't have that here. We're just trying to go rebuild the building on almost exactly the same site, less than 10 feet tall. So that's the, they also talk, you have a provision about unsafe structures, determined unsafe structures. We admit that this building is far from great. There may be some unsafe elements about it, but it's not determined unsafe structures. Usually is language that is accompanying condemnation. And it's telling you how you can build to get out of the condemnation order. That doesn't apply here at all whatsoever. They made an argument that because Section 6 doesn't require a special permit, we're not entitled to this. It was hard to understand. They're not attorneys. It's hard to reply sometimes to people who aren't attorneys, but I'm not exactly sure what they're getting at. But as I said, the special permit procedures were adopted by most towns and cities to deal with the finding that is referenced in Section 6 of 40A, because Section 6 of 40A didn't say how to do it. And they want to have a procedure that have rules for hearings, that have rules for publishing. So most towns said, well, let's make it like our special permit. So, you know, in conclusion, I really believe that this is a rather simple case. I mean, we are not significantly increasing nonconformities, and the building that we're building is not going to be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. It's actually going to be better for this neighborhood. Now, I've told you we've got all these things we can do, which we really need to hear from are the scientists. So Mr. Jacob Smith is the structural engineer who created the plan. And you have that. That is an exhibit to today's document I believe it's exhibit number 1 is his narrative as to how we're building without danger to the wall with a no trespass. And I believe exhibit number 2 is all the detailed plans, which you really need to have him explain those to you. So, so I'm going to ask Mr. Smith to come up and talk to you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jacob Smith. I represent Jacob Smith Engineering Design, a structural engineering firm in South Deerfield, Massachusetts. I became involved in this project when Laura and Grace reached out and requested I look at the design of the garage and try to find a way that I could complement the neighbor's request. That being protecting the stone-faced retaining wall that's located about 6 feet away from the back of the existing garage. And also the requirement of just not having tradesmen basically on their property. I felt like this was something that we could achieve. Pretty quickly, we decided that we would have to leave the existing foundation wall to the rear of the structure, the one that was adjacent to the retaining wall. Mostly from the standpoint, as John noted earlier, that any sort of excavation of that wall would clearly fall into the neighbor's yard. And the heavy equipment near the retaining wall, as Mike Rainville pointed out, was not ideal, not really something that we wanted to do. So quickly we decided that we would leave the existing rear foundation wall of the structure. And then the balance of the garage would be built in a conventional manner. Now, the garage in general, there's nothing special about it. The only sort of unique part is that existing wall that we're leaving at the rear. That existing wall, as it was an 8-inch wall by 2 feet deep, which makes it not suitable for a new structure. So to get around that, and also to sort of help the adjacent retaining wall, the decision was made to install what's called helical piers. These are basically, for lack of a better word, dirt screws. It's just basically a piece of pipe with sort of an auger bit at the end. And what these allow you to do, you can leave the existing retaining or the existing rear foundation wall and install these new screws just inboard of that existing wall and attach it to a bolster. So basically, the new structure would fall on top of the existing foundation wall, but yet we would re-support the existing foundation wall with these new dirt screws that would be installed intermittently along the length of the foundation wall. I forget, every 6 or 7 feet or so. And so really, in my mind, what that allows us to do is to reuse the existing foundation without any excavation towards the rear. So that leaves that. Everything that's farther away from the retaining wall and inboard on the garage, we just get normal foundation assembly. And by doing that, really, sort of what happens is the weight of the structure is transmitted down to the bottom of the helical piers. These helical piers can be installed to such a depth that below the existing retaining wall, and thereby the impact to the existing retaining wall from any new structure should be absolutely minimal. There needs to be, during the construction process, attention paid to the manner in which excavation and demolition is conducted. Certainly it should be done probably with like a smaller excavation device, maybe something, either something on wheels, perhaps, something that's going to have a smaller impact to the surrounding area. But in general, that was kind of my approach to the project, and I don't really see how reconstructing the garage and leaving the rear retaining wall would adversely affect the existing retaining wall that's located roughly 6 feet away. Yeah, I don't know. Looking at those drawings, if you guys have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer it to the best of my abilities.
Could the existing exterior wall on the rear be retained for use in the new structure?
Could the existing rear retaining wall,
No, the exterior wall,
the foundation wall?
the foundation wall and,
Yes.
and the frame.
Yes, well, so, yes, in theory, we could keep the rear framed wall. We are proposing to keep the rear foundation wall, and incorporate that into the new design. But the rear framed wall, it doesn't entirely meet the specifications of what they want to do, but I think we could probably keep that in place if needed to work with it. That makes sense. The rear framed wall of the garage, if that's what you were driving at.
Would you mention that there was a 2-foot footing on the existing rear wall?
Yes,
Does that meet code requirements?
it does not. It does not. The existing foundation wall of the rear of the garage is not suitable for new construction. So to get around that is the idea of installing these helical piers, which will allow it to become a suitable thing. Because the issue with the 2-foot depth is what's there is that it doesn't meet frost depth. We're not below frost. By putting in the helical piers, it moves the bearing to well below frost depth, well below 4 feet down. And the helical piers it's a very sort of common tool that's used in the underpinning of foundations for this condition and for conditions like this.
Do you know offhand the height of the retaining wall?
I do not know the exact height of the retaining wall. My understanding is that it's on the order of 6 foot. 6 foot of exposed wall.
6 foot of exposed wall.
I don't know what's below it. What's below grade. Yeah. And my understanding of that existing wall is that it's a cast in place concrete wall with a stone facing.
So you mentioned that when you first came to the site that you looked at it and you kind of got the sense that, yeah, excavator wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
At that location.
Yeah.
So how close do you think an excavator or construction of normal foundation could be to that retaining wall and not have it at the integrity of the wall?
Well, that's an interesting question. A lot of that sort of depends on the structure in the wall, as far as, how tall the wall is and how large the structure is. In this case, the confining factor is actually that the property boundary is much closer than the retaining wall. The property boundary is only, between 1 and 2 feet away. So can't excavate beyond that anyways. So really it's kind of the property boundary is confining us. But in general, when you're looking at like a foundation wall that's roughly 6 feet away, you're looking at a foundation wall. What you're thinking about is the weight of the bottom of the foundation wall and how it's going to affect the retaining wall. And normally that distribution for the soil is on the order of 45 to 30 degrees, somewhere in there. And really, what we're going to do is take the weight of this new foundation and sink it much deeper with those helical piers. So it's just not going to get at that retaining wall. It should be well below. So that was the general strategy here. So figuring out how to minimize impact of the existing retaining wall and also not have any trace people on the property boundary. Mr. Carter can speak to how they plan to construct that, but I believe the exterior wall of the assembly could easily be built in place on the ground and stood up in a sense that it wouldn't require any trace people to be, on the other side of the boundary.
I guess the question I guess I have in my head is, you looked at it and you felt like that type of work that would be necessary to put a normal foundation in along that back line of the garage. What difference does it make then if you're on a east or west facing facade, the new garage, it's only a foot in? That, to me, that's still like close, and you're gonna have impact on the back wall, when you have impact on the sidewalls as well, at least in your portion, like is there like a, well, close can you get basically without, like,
So the retaining wall issue really only presents itself to the rear. So it's really only a condition that we're facing up on one side. But I mean, if it's just sort of theoretical question, how close could you get to that foundation wall? Well, I would say that it is, you wouldn't want to approach closer than the wall is tall, right? So if you've got a 6-foot wall, you wouldn't want to be any closer than 6 feet away. You know, thereby, you know, looking at a 45-degree roughly cut. That would be my rule of thumb.
Sure.
Question? Josh, any questions?
No, no, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, looking at the, a plan, I see that the wall, retaining wall above ground is 5 feet 10 inches.
Right.
So I said, close to 6 feet, it's pretty good. Okay. Now, the other issue I want to point out is when we're talking about maybe saving the back structural wall that sits on top of the foundation. One of the complaints that was made in the last memorandum by the opposition was that they didn't want light pollution. The existing wall has 3 windows, so there's lights coming out of that building now, okay? The new one, on purpose, has no windows, so there's not going to be any light pollution coming from the new wall. So the new wall may be better as to its obtrusiveness to the opposition neighbors. So at least bear that in mind. Okay. Now I'd like to get Mr. Kiter up here, who's the builder. He's got a company that's done a lot of work around the valley, including Easthampton, and he'll tell you how he's going to build it without trespass. All right. Thank you.
Good evening. Just before I jump into that, I just wanted to comment on, piggyback on something Jake was talking about. So Jake is a licensed structural engineer in the state of Massachusetts, as you guys most certainly know. With a Massachusetts unrestricted supervisor's license, we can construct via prescriptive code under Massachusetts state building code. Prescriptive, so what's written in that code book we can abide by. The design that we're contemplating is outside of prescriptive code, which is why we are in need of somebody like Jake to design a system, stand behind, that will work. Okay, so I just want to make, just so everybody's on the same page. The conversation about geotech, or excuse me, about helical piers, those are an alternative approach to managing point loads building. As far as I'm concerned, the major issue with the conventional approach here isn't even the proximity, the new foundation to the old retaining wall. It's the overdig needed to provide a safe access for concrete workers. You have to excavate beyond the new plane of the wall, and that would there bring us into the neighbor's property. Okay, so we have a subsidiary company that is a civil contracting company with licensed hoisting engineers. We perform very, very sensitive work, you know, ranging from working with gas lines, utilities, high voltage, all different types of geotechnical conditions. How performing the work is not the concern. My opinion, it's the property line and the proximity of that property line to the work. Okay. So with the helical, the dirt, I want to call them helical piles.
Fine.
The helical piles, basically what we will do there is we've worked with Jake on many projects, very complex construction projects, renovating existing structures with constraints. and utilize these helical piles as a method to distribute load and work around existing obstructions or constraints. In this case, we'll bring them just inboard of the existing foundation wall. They will be installed, as Jake mentioned, or to a depth at which we feel there's no concern with the adjacent retaining wall on the neighbor's property. We will be installing saddles on top of those helical piles. We will be installing dowels for shear into existing wall, and we'll basically be connecting those piers in a new wall on the interior side of the existing wall. The reason I would argue we cannot repurpose the existing exterior wall is that in order to not trespass, I need to construct a new wall on the ground, including siding. Okay. Need to do as much work as possible and tilt the wall up. Okay. If we have to keep that existing wall, the amount of reconfiguration and work required on the backside, I think would make it very, very difficult. I'll also go on record by saying we're very courteous contractors, and we would greatly appreciate being granted access to just a couple of feet. That would certainly make our job easier and much less costly for our client. But if needed, we can do this work, stay on the property. Okay, but in order to do that, I do need to build a new wall. Okay, the demolition process will bring everything inboard. Jake started to talk about the size of equipment. This project's a mini excavator. It's a 10,000-pound machine. The machine will sit well onto the property and plenty far away from the retaining wall on the other property. We will bring the building in. We'll do all of that concrete work, direct the structure, and we will go through great lengths and effort to build that back elevation and the roof assembly in a very atypical way, but to stay on the property. Is there anything else, John? The drainage. Okay. Again, as John pointed out, the new design is, it's a conventional roof. It's got a ridge and two different elevations. One's heading back towards the driveway, towards the road, that will have gutters, and will move any water from that roof in the opposite direction of the neighbor's property. And the back elevation, we will install a gutter, and the idea is to pitch that towards the existing house, down through downspout and underground, and connect into an existing underground PVC drainage pipe that's pushing the water far, far away from that property. So it's like, aside from a torrential rainstorm or some weather condition that is beyond the capacity of the gutter, the majority of events there should be zero rain from that, or water from that structure moving onto the adjacent property, which is a large improvement. So is there anything else I can help answer?
Will there be any vibration from the installation of the helical coils?
No. I mean, yes, there's a machine that is going to push them down. There will be vibration. I am not personally concerned about the vibration of that installation moving onto the wall. I'm not able to provide you with any science or anything further on that, but my opinion is the vibration, if any, out of the retaining wall would be negligible. I would agree with that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I reached out to the city's building inspector as well on this question. He got back to me earlier today. I'd asked him, hey, John, this is John Flagg. We spoke earlier about the 14 Norton Street project. Said that you met with the abutters at 21 St. James Ave to view the retaining wall and give your opinion on the proposal. Would you be willing to share your opinion on the proposal with the ZBA? He replied per our conversation, this is a unique project due to the placement of the existing structure being in close proximity to the neighbor's retaining wall. The use of helical type piers for the foundation of the building would certainly alleviate much of the vibration that could damage the retaining wall. However, the excavation of the existing foundation, if one exists, could be problematic. There is no question in my experience that helical piers are the preferred method of supporting the new structure, but I cannot speak to the removal of the old structure. I hope this helps. John.
I can speak to removal of the old structure if you'd like.
Yeah, actually, because I do have some further questions on that removal. It appears on the plans that Mr. Smith put together that the foundation area is going to remain along the rear of the building and then return a couple feet on both sides. Correct. And I'd imagine that's to keep it further away from the 6 foot line of angle of repose there.
Right. I don't want to speak for you, Jake, but I would assume that's why you made that decision.
Yeah, it's just because you put a little return on that wall, it's a little bit of extra stability on the end. Seems to make sense. And not to mention just the thought is that, you know, somewhere along there, we're going to make a saw cut to remove the existing foundation. And it would be best if that was done a little bit away from the edge. So that's kind of why we moved that off corner, brought it in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we were to use that as a line of demarcation, and that would be the limit of excavation by machine, like your machine cannot get any further than that line if we play connected dots across the back?
You're not, yeah,
I'm saying that the base of the machine, that doesn't mean you can't.
oh, the base? Yeah. I think we can agree with that.
Yeah, to limit the
Yeah.
the compression in that area.
I mean, yes, and we would have to do that. Yes. We wouldn't be able to, just looking here before I say this. I don't see any other, logical way of doing it. The only thing I do want to bring up, and I need Jake's opinion on this, is that the new structure is a concrete slab, and the processed gravel beneath that slab does need to be compacted. Now, it will be on the inside of the existing foundation, and a new foundation sitting on piers. Again, I'm not personally concerned about that, but that will require, we can certainly plate compact, manual versus a vibratory roller, minimize any vibration. I would want Jake's opinion on whether or not you see any risk or issue with doing it that way.
No, I think you're right. I think, you know, the new main floor slab in the garage has to go, you know, up to the back of the existing foundation wall. So, you know, and there'll be some excavation up the base of the existing foundation wall. But that's it. Nothing more than that. And then I think that any placement of new materials, you know, compaction is going to have to be done small ways. And, you know, maybe it's either jumping, you know, like a handheld jumping jack compactor, or even hand compacting, or, you know, kind of as needed in that rear area. And then as we move away from the rear.
Which we would do anyway.
Yeah.
Because
You wouldn't bring a large vibratory.
Yeah, we can't get that close to the wall.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
But if this ends up, if this ends up as a directive in the document, I would just want to be clear that it doesn't say any equipment, because the helical pile, I'm not exactly sure which angle they would want to install these helical piles. Again, that's a smaller piece of equipment. The excavator itself, large vibratory drum rollers, things of that nature, absolutely we can agree to that.
Small, we could do the idea, you indicated a mini excavator, 10,000 pound, you know, we could say a limit of equipment in excess of
And if you want to say equipment in excess of 10,000 pounds, I'd be comfortable saying that. Demarcate, in line with the saw cut.
Yeah.
Yes, we can certainly do that. We just need the bucket to be able to get close to the wall so that we can open it up for a saw cut and doing the forming work on the backside. So as far as vibration during the demolition process, I just want to speak to that. But as Jake pointed out, we're going to make a clean saw cut, concrete saw cut, to separate the portion of the building being removed from that which is remaining. And so, again, the foundation is not deep. What we're going to do is relieve the earth on each side and most likely just pull it in, pull it out. And so the side facing the back boundary line, if we do this properly, will not move at all. That's the intention because it's staying.
Any questions? Done? Next. Jake. Josh, any questions?
No, none from me. Thank you.
And I'm asking the experts to stay here, should any questions come up from the opposition.
I appreciate that.
We'll give them, all right? At this point, I'd like to ask the homeowners to take a few times to come up here, to tell you about the project and what's happened so far. Thank you.
Hi. I'm Laura. I'm President Grayson. Thank you all for being here tonight and taking your time to hear our case. We know you are volunteers and appreciate your service. We simply would like to rebuild our old, unattractive, deteriorated garage with a new functional garage and essentially the same footprint, not creating any new non-conformities. It's not a complicated project or building. It's a simple two-car garage that keeps with the vernacular aesthetic of New England and the surrounding neighborhood. The gable roof will help mitigate snow and rain drainage and also is traditional to New England. The design will make the garage look more residential in nature rather than an ugly industrial-looking building that we have now. We've invested in our home and in the community and would like to continue to improve our property and protect that investment. We took our neighbors' concerns very seriously. No one, including us, wants any harm to come to their wall. To do our due diligence, we've invested a considerable amount of time and budget to effectively address their concerns. The team of experts you've heard from tonight have illustrated that the project can be completed without harming the retaining wall, and therefore we respectfully ask to do it with the funding permit. And I have a few visuals because I don't know exactly what you have in front of you. I just wanted to provide. This first one is our visuals of what the garage looks like now and what the new garage will look like. You can see it'll be an improvement. And then the second one shows all the other garages on our street. All have gabled roofs and look more residential.
Excuse me, were these part of the materials that were previously distributed, or are these just being seen first?
You cut in and out there, Josh.
Okay.
Let me turn you up, Josh, but I think I heard your question. The question was, are these new materials or are these materials that we have seen previously? And it looks like one of these is materials you've seen, and another one of these that shows the other garages in the neighborhoods is new and one that you have not seen.
Okay.
Is there you wouldn't happen to have this virtually, I could email it over to Josh, would you? Perfect.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I just report my clients for 1 minute, Mr. Chair?
Not I can't see it. A problem, but.
If you have any questions of me, I'm still here. But if not, I would reserve the right to bring up experts or to come back myself to reply, with any further reference from opposition or other people. And I just would like to do that. Now, I guess we've made our presentation. You've heard the experts. I hope you get a chance to read my memorandum. That's one that just came in today, so I know that's tricky, but I believe that you should grant this permit. The big issue was the retaining wall. Science and technology, we dealt with that. And the other issue is trespass. We're not going to trespass. We're not going to hurt the wall. It's really complicated. I'll give you that. It's complicated and expensive, but we're taking care of the neighbor's property. It shouldn't hurt the neighbor's property. And we should be entitled to special permit. Thank you.
Let me ask a question.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure.
Sorry.
Yes.
You mentioned, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes in the presentation, you said the building commissioner church could have approved this and then went in a different direction. I was curious if you could expand upon why they could have approved and why it's not approved.
Okay. Your bylaw doesn't really call for allowing a building inspector to grant a building permit where a reconstruction doesn't abide by the current zoning bylaw. So where we're reconstructing and we're still staying where we were, we're obviously too close to the side, too close to the rear. But the 2020 case law from the appellate court said that we don't increase those violations. We don't increase those violations. We can rebuild by right, meaning that this church would have been in the unusual situation where she might not have been in conformity with the plain wording and language of your ordinance, but she would have been in conformity with the case law of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's awkward, but I realized she did it and then apparently changed her mind immediately. We just didn't know for more than a week that she had changed her mind. That was the awkward part. But you know, under the plain language of your bylaw, maybe we should be here under the plain language of your bylaw. We're not increasing the side yard or the rear yard at all. So under the case law, this church could have just said, here's your building permit. But your bylaw, the ordinance doesn't allow that. You need this finding that the new building is not going to be worse than the old building, substantially worse for the neighborhood. We don't think it is. We made that presentation. So instead we're here. So that was the awkward part about it. So
I have a question. This is for staff. What is the reason that the building permit was revoked? Do you have more information on that?
Yeah, so that it wasn't supposed to be issued the way that it was. Just it was a technical issue where when you create a permit in the permitting software that we use, it's supposed to just automatically require approval from specifically the Board of Health. And then additional people can be added on. For whatever reason, when this building permit was generated, it didn't require any. It was generated where it didn't require sign off from any other department, so it was automatically approved without any review. And the approval or the creation of this permit was unrelated to BJ Church's determination about this pre-existing non-conforming. This just had to do with a technical issue of how the permit was generated.
He knew better than I did. That's any other questions? Yeah.
So I'm curious, I heard you mention a couple of times about simply changing the roof line and the owners mentioned as well. Plans show a second floor and I heard no mention of the second floor. Is there a second floor?
There is dormers, yes. It's unheated, no plumbing. There's like an attic area with dormers. The windows face the street. There's not any light pollution. There was a complaint about light pollution. And if you read the architecture, not the engineers or the contractors, read the architecture report, she says the building would have to be that height anyways, put on a normal roof. So we did put a dormer in it once it got that high. The dormers on the other side would have to be that high anyways to get rid of the flat of the roof. So, yeah. What's it for?
On that second floor?
What is the second floor? I don't know. You have the architectural plans as an exhibit to my condition filing, which you should have there. It's the plans that have the pretty picture of the building in the front. Yeah, I think that's in front of you. You should have some square footage of the second floor. Like I said, there's no plumbing, there's no heat. People think we're building an apartment. We are not building an apartment.
I mean, it looks to me like, with the exception of the stair itself, it's the same footprint.
Okay.
It would make sense to me. And I'm not sure technically calling it a second floor is accurate. It's a storage area.
I think that's correct. Yeah. And any thought of this becoming an apartment doesn't make sense. There's no heat, there's no warmth. The storage area above the garage. You know, a lot of people need space above their garage so they can put their cars in their garage instead of other things that they put in there. This is a storage. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I sent you that.
Yep, and I've sent it over. Josh, you should have received that document in your email.
I'm looking at it now. Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't have any other questions. I mean, other than, so the second floor of the garage, would it be storage then?
Yes, I believe it's planned for storage right now. There's no, like I said, there's no water in storage.
I know, no water and no heat. I'm just wondering what it's going to be used for. Okay.
Yeah, no water, no heat. It's a garage with a storage area above the garage. That's what they're building. And they made it higher to put a normal roof. And with that height, they can put a storage area above the garage, and that's what they're doing. It's nothing more complicated than that, as far as I understand. Any other questions?
Any further questions for the applicant? Okay. So at this point, we will open up the hearing to other members of the audience. I will ask that when you speak, that you state your name, your address, and that you try not to repeat, the person that said something, that you don't just get up and say the same thing over and over again. So, at this point, please feel free to step up to the microphone. Okay, that's the picture. They're in the dimensional. They're already in. Just a little bit there. Okay.
Cool. So, hi, I'm Paul Hamus, and I'm the abutter at 21 Secretary Senate. First of all, we understand that you're serving the board as volunteers, so we thank you. Actually, I'm even more concerned now. I was hoping to be alleviated of any stress, because once I heard the word compacted, it kind of took my whole letter out of it. But I'm just going to say, I want to make clear that we're not trying to stop our neighbors from building a new garage. We just don't want it built on top or retaining wall for a number of reasons we've already explained in great. All we're asking is that it's placed back a little away from every retaining wall for a greater margins. They have plenty of room to do that. We've already been very accommodating, permissive, and forgiving to Tiger and Hewitt's throughout other phases of their construction, even though their building activities cause problems. We didn't say anything in the interest of remaining neighborhood. They say they've offered to meet with us, and that's true, but it wasn't for the purpose of discussion and negotiation. Their only offer was to kind of explain to us how, but we don't agree that they should. Regarding neighborhood support, I want you to know that every letter and signature reflected is from either an immediate neighbor who could see the setup for themselves, or a friend or contractor who has actually seen the problem. Anyone who sees it immediately sees our concerns. And please keep in mind that every single person who signed their letter of support, to our knowledge, has never seen the back of the structure, how it sits retained. Your neighbors on Norton Street can't see the back of the shed. They don't see the setup from our perspective and have no idea why we are objecting. They don't know the whole story. They don't see the. We didn't want to make this a neighborhood issue. We just thought it was an issue between us. If they would just place it 15 feet back, they would comply with setback, and they could build whatever they want, and we would have no problem with that at all. They have plenty of room to do it. It just sounds like, it also sounds like their site never would be very supportive. A two-story garage is much different type of structure than this shed that is currently there. You can see in the picture. All we are asking is that the new construction placed back a little further from our wall. That's all. We don't think that's unreasonable. Thank you again for your time.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Gadsden. I'm Paul's wife at 21 St. James Ave. First of all, thank you for your time in this considering all of this. My grandfather Henry built the retaining wall, and Mr. McLaughlin says that just because something is old doesn't make it historic. Well, to me, this is a historic feature of our property. It took my grandfather a long time to build this, and I want to preserve it for as long as possible. So even though Kiter says, don't worry, and we have insurance, I know that mistakes can happen. A mistake happened during the first phase of their construction, where Kiter excavated a good 10 feet into our property and hillside twice, ran over and filled the hole with the bushes, and then left it an uncompacted, unseeded mess. I took care of that, I cleaned it up, and I just shrugged it off because I didn't want to get in a fight with it first. But this time around, I'm expected to trust that they're going to be able to pull this off with laser precision and to do the right thing if the mistake does happen. If the mistake were to happen and the retaining wall is damaged, there really isn't a way to replace it with something like in kind. It would get replaced with something like concrete or a block system. I think we've demonstrated that there is some level of risk here due to the unusual setup and the extreme proximity. And while Kiter might be okay with that risk, we are not. If they're having to employ sophisticated underground engineering, that tells me that there's something unusual about the situation. There's risk that they're attempting to mitigate, but the risk could be eliminated by just moving the new construction back a little. So I don't think it's right that it should be up to them to decide what level of risk is appropriate for our property. The applicant is here to ask for an exemption to the rules, but the zoning setbacks exist for a reason, primarily to protect the butters. So I'm asking you, the zoning board, to please protect me and my property from what I sincerely believe could be a detriment. I'm putting my trust in you to make up here for me. Thank you very much for your time and your service.
I'm Corbin Chipley with on Fort Preston Avenue, Easthampton. I didn't hear anything, I'm just listening. The two things that I hear is they said that the new construction is going to be in almost the same footprint as the old, but it is going to be built. The new foundation will be a little bit longer, and in that case, I believe that's where it's going to. I don't remember what I was thinking. When it becomes longer, that's why DJ could give the building permit, or was it against, because you could build it right in the exact footprint. But as soon as you go a little bit more, then you're encroaching. You're not encroaching towards them more, but you're outside of the exact footprint. So by going a little bit more, if it's this footprint and this is a foot off, and you go a little bit more, you're still a foot off. So that's where you need the special permit. But that's all I have to say. Actually, I was just thinking about one more thing. So, so there was, an old picture. You guys have the old picture from like the 50s. Remember back? So at one point they allowed you to build a shed roof structure. I believe it was, if it didn't go above, I mean, and I don't know, this is before my time. I just see it around where there's a shed built right on a property line. And it was allowed by the building department back in the 50s or 60s or 40s. And so if you look at the old picture, you know, and obviously it's still a shed roof. Part of it was just a wood shed. It wasn't even a shed. It was just a roof with piers, pole barn, I believe it would be called. And, you know, it's just really difficult to understand how, you know, the shed with a pole barn off to one side that got enclosed at a later point sometimes, whether it was permitted or not, or whether the pole barn was originally part of the shed, or if it was just something somebody put on there as a, you know, just enclosed it. You know, you know, and just like they're saying, they're not gonna, you know, put people upstairs, or it's not gonna be an ADU. But at what point, you know, at one point, maybe this was a shed that somebody was like, oh, it's never going to be a garage. We're allowing this to be a shed, you know, and then it just builds and builds on top of that. Is, I don't know. That, yeah, so that's.
My name is Carol LaPlante. I'm at 10 Norton Street, the side butter. I've seen tried to do your work on the original building itself at home, and look fine. I have my house property is the length of their property until where the garage should be. I do not anticipate any problem, you know, because they have come in. Just make sure that it's not just folks dealing in opposition. You have the other butter saying it's fine. Okay? Thank you.
Is there anybody in the stratosphere that is interested in speaking?
If you'd like to speak, just hit the raise hand button on your screen. Not seeing any.
Okay, is there anyone else in the audience who's interested in speaking? And at this point, we will close the public hearing so the board can discuss what they've heard.
Sure. Can I respond to the condition of the
You may speak. And I ask that you address everything to the board.
Yes, of course, yeah. As for moving the structure down the driveway, that wouldn't fit with this expensive addition that they put on. They built the addition with the entrances. It's designed to work together. The new garage and the addition that was put on for years ago. So moving it down the driveway would be very problematic with the flow and structure of the original design, of the intended design. As for this guy named Fears, I'm sorry she has fears. I mean, we presented the science. Mr. Chair, you might want to ask her, did Mr. Rainville review these plans or not? That was a question I had based upon interplay. That, you know, if there's no scientific reason to say that there's a danger, I'm sure you can craft conditions. It sounds like you're thinking of conditions. I believe you could do conditions on a special permit, which is totally common and reasonable, to make sure that we protect that wall. You know, I believe a listing of conditions could do that. It clearly do that. And I'm sure that this board can craft condition. And I still have my experts here. We don't want to close the hearing. You want to consider exact language of conditions with the experts here. I'm sure they could work with you to come up with conditions that could better protect the wall from any problem at all whatsoever. The experts are here, they're on our dime. If you want to work with them to get exact language for conditions that you could utilize, we would be glad to do that with the chair before you close the hearing.
Well, we're just closing the public portion. We're not ending the hearing.
You're not in any.
We're not ending the hearing.
All right.
We're saying, okay, we've heard your testimony, we've listened to you, and now it's our chance to talk amongst ourselves before we make a decision, just to, in case there's other questions that do come up, we would like to.
You still know they're there. They're there for
We
you.
know they are there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And then, just Mr. Chair, just to echo procedurally, yeah, we want to make sure we call this next section discussion. If we do close the hearing, that will, if we were to continue the hearing, there would be a timer.
I used the wrong word.
That's what I was.
That's okay. Hey, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I only do this once a month. I don't know all the terms every time. All right, so the board will now have a discussion.
I'm very comfortable with you talking about, about doing. I understand their concern, about the wall. I'm just talking about moving the whole building. So what does that mean? You leave that piece of old foundation there?
I feel like it gets messy when we
That's
start
what I'm
saying,
saying.
sure, you
You're
can
creating more, you're
move it.
creating more of a problem. Cause I could have to dig 4 feet down frost wall. Right?
Well, they would have foundation in order to not, if we're worried about that
Yeah.
activity endangering.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't see that would be, I think it'd be creating more of a problem.
So I do know that the city of Easthampton has, I think by right, you can get a permit if you have a pre-existing non-conforming structure on a lot.
Yeah.
And you were looking to put an addition on it. You could put an addition on it that does not increase the non-conformity.
Right.
And not even have to come to zoning. Because we used to have multiple hearings where people just wanted to put an addition on their house.
Right.
And it could be, you could continue it right down the property line, but it was still not conforming, but it didn't create any more non-conforming.
Yeah,
I think
ran into that before.
you and I have sat through many a hearing on that.
Yeah.
So, and we modified the zoning laws to meet that criteria because we knew that it was the whole town property, houses are built, buildings are built on properties that, the zoning laws have now been updated. And looking at the pictures that are presented, I would say that the garage structure predates the zoning laws of 1975. That's when I took it. That seem pretty reasonable?
Yeah.
Mhm.
For my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe if someone were to build a structure, any structure, they don't pull a building permit, they build it and it's not conforming to zoning. If it exists for 7 years, it is then considered pre-existing non-conforming. So as long as it's been there for 7 years, it would be pre-existing non-conforming, which I believe is the case.
48, section 7. Yes. If something is, you normally, prior non-conforming structure is something that was legal and then became illegal by zoning. Okay. But there's another provision that says if you build it and the permit's wrong or you don't get any permits, if it's there long enough, it's going to become pre-existing.
Okay.
We got that about 25 years ago. I didn't swear.
Well, and the picture of it goes as far as having a license plate on it. Unfortunately, this was back when they put the year on the license plate in that little white portion.
Yeah.
So, it's been here for a while.
I have a question going back to the issue when the first permit was theoretically supposed to be submitted and was not properly entered into the software.
Mhm.
Had that been properly entered into the software, would we be here today? Like, what would the process have been
Yes.
theoretically?
Yes, if that had been entered, it would have come to planning, and I would have looked at it and said that our zoning ordinance requires a special permit. So essentially, if you look in the project summary, one of the things I mentioned there, it's BJ Church's review. She views it and determines that it's pre-existing non-conforming and that the proposed changes will not intensify the non-conforming nature. That was what her determination was. What was not made clear to the applicant was that this requires a special permit because, and I think I should even just put it right there, a special permit is required in accordance with section 11.12A, the Easthampton zoning ordinance, if the building commissioner finds that such proposed changes do not conform to all current applicable zoning ordinances. Review of the application shall be required by the zoning board of appeals. So no matter what, if that had been handled properly, it would have gotten to us.
All right. Josh, do you have any thoughts?
No, not really. I mean, I've got some ideas, but granted, this is my first time at this, so I'm gonna kind of sit back a little bit. I have some ideas of some opinions, but I want to wait until we actually get to a vote for that because I don't think I'm out of line with what everyone else is thinking.
So there seems to be a question about the size of the new structure versus the existing structure. And will the new structure create any more non-conformity?
No, the new structure will not be in need now. It's, there's the side yard, the rear yard, that's not changing. That's staying exactly the same. We're not going to high or doing anything else like that.
And it would, if it were to be increased on one side or the other. So I look at, the property that abuts 10 Norton Street. The corner is not square, the building in theory is, and it appears as though it goes from a 3.6 feet to approximately 2 feet at the front corner. And so if you extended it along those lines, you would increase the non-conformity. Of course. So in this point here,
yes,
as you go here, if you were to extend that building, you would increase the non-conformity.
Yes, yeah. Well, what we're doing is making this like we're see how this is like a little jog here.
Yep.
We're increasing the jog out, but we're also making this shortening the building itself.
Okay.
So the square footage doesn't change as much.
Okay.
So this,
you
is following that.
are not going to extend
No.
any further
No.
into that property line.
Absolutely
And
not.
this appears to go extend away because it's 1.6 at this
Yeah.
point, or 1.7 at that point. That's all. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm just-
those two are staying the same. This comes out, but the whole structure is not going to be as long.
So
this
now I
way-
have a question,
Yes.
and maybe Mr. Smith can speak to this. Because if you're going to shorten the rear wall section in its length,
We're not shortening the rear wall. It's actually inside.
I'm sorry, that's what you just told me.
No, that was the front. I'll show you. The new building,
Oh, okay. Nope, I understand.
the front building has a jog in it. We're now making it go out at the length of the jog
But the rear length of the structure
is the
gonna remain
same.
the same.
Yeah, we're not gonna touch that.
I have a question. If the plan had been not to demolish, but just to take the existing structure and strengthen it and put a new shell on it or put some new siding on it so that it would be in line with aesthetically with the house, would that have created an issue? And I'm asking the zoning board of this. Or is it because they're demolishing the old one and starting a new one?
Yeah, would you like me to answer this
Go
one?
ahead.
Yeah, so this has been kind of a question we have to deal with a lot at the ZBA, where if you want to demolish a building and build it, that's obviously a special permit. But then the question is, well, are you allowed to maintain a building? And kind of what level is it before you trigger that special permit? And in theory, somebody could, do some maintenance to their exterior wall, and maybe do some exterior to their interior wall next year. Then the next year, maybe some roof work. And then, 3 years down the line, you have a brand new building, and it was never a new building. It was just maintenance to an existing building. It's the ship of Theseus, and there's that building approach, which somebody in theory could do, in cases people have done. But yes, if you don't want to do it over the span of 4 years building a new structure, then yeah, you would need a special permit, and it's where is that line? And if you're demolishing a building and building a new one, you're well within the need for ZBA review.
Okay. Well, because here's one of my thoughts. I mean, we've lived in our house for 22 years, and we have a fence around our pool that is non-conforming. And I have not done anything. We've always wanted to replace it, and I have not done anything to it because I understand if I'm taking something that's out of compliance, any alteration I'm doing on it should bring it a little bit more, at least, into compliance. And that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking in this situation. We're not bringing anything closer to compliance.
Fence regulation. I think if you took, because it's talking about a fence, right?
Yeah, and
So if you took the fence down, I don't think you can put the fence back up, right? It's not,
that's a fence issue.
right. That's not,
Okay, maybe that was a bad example, but still, I'm thinking if we're changing something, we should change it for the better. In terms of compliance and the zoning laws.
And nothing's changing. That's why it's not, that's why we're here so long.
Yeah.
We have a question I heard it laid out by their attorney, here for us as a board. Again, it was defined that, you can alter, extend, or change, and then the definition was read to us by alteration. So I understand at the same time within our ordinance as it relates to non-conforming structures, there's like an exception about restoration. So if you had a building that was suffered a damage by fire or other cause, you would allow that. So I'm wondering why we have an exception there if we allow non-conforming structures to be demolished and rebuilt in the same footprint. I'm curious what.
It's one that's, the difference is that one is allowable by right, and it sets a limit to how much value can be put into it, where by special permit, you don't have those same restrictions, and you don't have to wait for a fire before you can rebuild the structure. So it's just, some relief valve for, in the event of, a natural event, unexpected event. There we go.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions, thoughts, or concerns?
So I haven't been on here long enough to have a precedent you were referring to about, I can recall the conversation about extending non-conformity. Again, I understand that this is still not making distorts through the rear or side setback, but if you're increasing the bulk in the setback, is that you could say non-conformity?
We're limited to 25 feet for an accessory building.
25 feet how?
Although there is contradiction within the zoning law. Because it says one thing on one page and another thing on another page, like most zoning laws. But it's, 25 feet is kind of the rule of thumb. 2 stories and a pitched roof. So that's the theory of the height of the structure.
Right, so that would be 25 feet within the legal buildable area of the lot. So they're outside of the area. Does then adding height increase the bulk for that? Adding up everything.
Well, it doesn't fall over.
No, because technically it's not going to be non-conforming. The height, as long as the structure is not taller than 25 feet, it's not a non-conformity. If they wanted to put up a 40-foot structure within that same footprint, that would be that would be increasing the non-conformity. Because now they're saying, fine, we're still within the same footprint, but instead we're exceeding the 25-foot allowable height by going 40 feet. So that would be increasing the non-conformity.
I feel that the case around conformity is pretty solid. I feel like it all lands on the question of detriment. That's my personal opinion.
Well, that's why we're here. Well, your personal opinion. Try to make a sound judgment. Any further questions, discussions, thoughts, concerns?
Not right now.
Not right now.
What condition?
So I think that, you know, as you know, we were listening to people, obviously the constructability is a concern by everyone. It looks like the proposed engineering that Mr. Smith has put together is going to alleviate any disruption of soil between the existing structure and the property line, ergo the retaining wall. And the proposed construction of the framing portion by Mr. Kiter, implying that he's going to build the wall, exterior wall, sheet it, side it, paint it, do anything and everything that you need to do, and then stand it up. Am I correct in that thought process?
You are, and we will need to be on the back side of the building, but we'll remain on the client's property.
So if we were to, you know, as with any, you know, there would be some sort of sediment fence along around a construction site anyway, to a degree.
We would need to look at the topography,
right,
and determine whether or not there is a risk of sediment or erosion. With us keeping this portion of the wall in place, I'm not sure that we would be running it on that. Yeah, I have to go up with the gradients.
Right. Looking at the survey, it doesn't appear as though there's much variation, and looking at the pictures, you know, it all looks rather flat on the backside of the retaining wall and the existing structure.
And sir, my only reservation there, you know, putting down a silt sock or something, it's not an issue, is that if we are being confined to 1 feet 8 inches of work area, I'm gonna need all the inches there. Yeah, that's my only concern.
In the letter that you, John, sent, you indicated there was an interesting verbiage you used relating to accessing other people's property. And, you know, basically, you know, you could do it within reason.
De minimis?
Was that?
De minimis?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. I
And
mean,
could we get some greater definition of that?
de minimis means where if the trespass occurs, it is so minimal, it would not be good enough for a court to cut it, meaning that it's so minor that the judge is going to say, go away, you know, don't bother. That's what is in Latin. It's a Latin. And that's, in English, that's the best way I can put it. I mean, if somebody steps over for a minute, you could bring a trespass action, but a judge might say, that's the minute, get out of here. You know, right? That's essentially, you know, what, we're not going to aim for that at all, but we're going to try to avoid any trespass at all whatsoever because it's so clear that people are concerned. But I mean, if we are gonna build and have conditions, would be nice. The opponents at that point might be more understanding for their own safety, make sure everything works well, but it's, yeah, you know, the neighbor's decision to make. But to me, this means it's so minor that the judge isn't gonna care.
Okay,
That's a good way.
I just want to get clarification on that, so we're all understanding the same thing. Okay. You asked for condition of kind of a broad stroke condition layout, what we were thinking. I think there was a discussion about no excavating equipment in excess of 10,000 pounds within 4 feet of the existing rear of structure.
4 or 6.
It shows 4 feet because then there's another 1.5 feet to the property line for ballpark figures, another 3 feet to the fence.
Which structure are we referring to?
The existing structure, rear property line. The return walls are showing 4 foot on Mr. Smith's drawings. If you want to look at them here, do you have big drawings? Yeah, I do. Okay. I thought you agreed.
Yeah, so you've got an 8-inch existing wall.
8-inch existing wall. There's a, yep.
And then
it shows a 1.4, but then there's a 4 foot mark that's halfway through.
Could we consider utilizing the property line with group, let's just, we'll go over, we'll call it 2 feet to this existing structure, less than that. And then, it looks like another 3 feet, could we say 5 feet from the existing property line?
Sure.
I think that's a given that will be easy for the team. Because we're gonna survey and market.
You're gonna survey and market. Is it reasonable to, when you survey and market, put caution tape at the property line? So at least we're aware of where the property line is.
Absolutely, we will demarcate.
We'll demarcate it. We're not gonna put up wattle, silt fence, just a caution tape on stakes.
Yes, we will do that.
Is there any other grave concerns that the board can think of?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
This is up to the board. Would anyone want to consider some type of bond case of damage as part of the condition? That no special permit will be granted until there is such a bond.
It's interesting you say that, because I did have that written. It's one of my thoughts. And, you know, a bond, escrow. The challenge we run into is enforcement. Because, you know, either Mr. Greenville or Mr. Smith are biased in one way or another. And if we wanted to put in a bond to ensure integrity of the existing wall, who would be the judge? And I don't want to be the judge. I don't think anyone on the board wants to be the judge. I don't think you want to be the judge. So what does that do for us?
I mean, it's a good question. And I suppose, yeah, you might be right on a project of this scale that we might not want to go into that.
Yeah.
But
If I may, a bond is, what you're really talking about is liability insurance rather than bond. And, you know, I don't know that the city would want to enter. If there was a claim, that it's damage, that would be a general liability insurance claim. I don't think bonding company would be, intervening at that.
Right. And, you know, an escrow account isn't going to do that. It's going to be an insurance issue. That's going to be in there. That's a conflict.
Perhaps a condition showing proof of insurance, something like that.
Which is required as part of the.
Yeah.
So that kind of, that unfortunately, I understand exactly what you're saying and then came to mind, but I just. All right, so we have property line demarcation with caution tape.
10,000 pound limit on it.
10,000 pound limit within 5 feet of the property line.
The revised plans cover the dirt smooth, right? That doesn't mean it's.
Yep. That would be the plan.
I'm sorry.
The helical coils. Yeah. Josh?
Nothing more.
Okay, so we still have to go through the whole list of the criteria for 12.6, right?
Yes, both the 11.12 and then the 12.6.
So
This does require findings.
So, you want to make a motion to approve?
all motions must be made to approve. And then the voting is dictated of whether we approve or not.
We would still need to make the specific findings before a motion to approve.
Right. So where's your finding list?
It's right in the back of the staff report.
Okay.
Got another copy if you don't have it, or if it got shuffled up. Yeah, let me go grab the other one.
Okay. Oh, one right here. Oh, perfect. One right there.
There. And then, yeah, you're asking, but the findings right there.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, so the 11.2 of the pre-existing non-conforming single-family or two-family residential structures. Non-conforming. I'm going to stop right there. This specifically reads non-conforming single and two-family residential structures. Maybe extended altered. Yeah, but it doesn't say anything about accessory structures.
Yes, this is referring to the use. Our understanding has been this is the use of the lot is a residential structure that extends. Yep.
I just want clarification that we're all in agreement here. So non-conforming single-family or two-family residential structures may be extended, altered, or structurally changed upon the determination of the building commissioner that its proposed changes comply with all required setbacks, yard, building coverage, and building height requirements. If the building commissioner finds that such proposal changes do not conform to all current applicable zoning ordinances, then it must come to us. If the zoning board finds that the proposed changes would not significantly intensify any nonconformities or create any new nonconformities. Well, we are not intensifying the nonconformity, so we're going to remain within the same footprint. And there are no new nonconformities because we're not changing the height of the structure. And that the proposed change does not cause the structure to become substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure to the neighborhood. So we're taking a shed roof structure, removing and building a new that is going to add more structural appeal. Architectural appeal. We can grant a special permit. And if we find that it would create new nonconformities, we require a variance. Well, we don't require a variance. So then we move on to the findings. The proposed changes would not create any nonconformities. That the proposed changes would not create any new nonconformities. The proposed changes would not cause the structure to become substantially more detrimental than the existing. Okay, that was section 11.12. Section 12.7.9, in order to issue a special permit,
we must have the following findings. A, conformance to the provision of the ordinance of the city of Easthampton, the general laws of the state of Massachusetts, and all applicable rules and regulations of state and federal agencies. We've kind of covered that pretty well. The protection of city amenities and abutting properties through the minimization of any detrimental or offensive uses or destruction of unique or important natural, scenic, or historic features of the site, on the site. So that specifically says on the site. So as long as we're not doing any detrimental things to the site, we are going to make the contractor will make every precaution to protect the abutter, but specifically the zoning laws that specifies on the site. Minimization of traffic or safety impacts of the proposed development on adjacent highways, roads, maximizing the convenience and safety of vehicular or pedestrian movement within the site. I feel that that's the only part is the pedestrian movement and every vehicular and pedestrian movement within the site, where we're going to have a 5-foot setback for 10,000-pound equipment from the rear setback. And the rear property lines will be demarcated with caution tape at survey.
Just to clarify, the 5 feet from the rear property line, not the rear setback.
Oh, I'm sorry, correct. Yes, rear property line. Adequacy of the method of disposal of sewage and refuse and the drainage of surface and subsurface water. That has been addressed with the changing in roof pitch and the draining as discussed through underwater leaders. Adequate means to protect waterlands, watersheds, aquifers, and well areas. That's well outside of the 100-foot setback. Mitigation of adverse impacts to the city resources, including the effects of the city's water supply and distribution system, sewage collection and treatment systems, fire protection, and streets. That's non-applicable. Provisions for the off-street loading and unloading of vehicles incidental to the normal operation of the establishment, parking, lighting, and internal traffic controls. That's applicable. Non-applicable. Applicants' efforts to integrate the development into the existing landscape through design features such as vegetative buffers and retention of open space and agricultural land. Is there going to be any landscaping performed on the rear of the structure once it's completed?
I do not believe they have planned on it. It's only 1 foot 8 inches, so I don't think it's feasible.
Okay.
I think this would be non-applicable again.
Non-applicable. Minimization of the area over which existing vegetation is to be removed. Where tree removal is required, special attention to be given to the planting of replacement trees. There'll be no trees removed?
No, sir.
Consistency of the development with respect to setback area, placement of parking, architectural style, and landscaping of the surrounding buildings and development. I believe that fits within the architectural. Adequacy of the measures to prevent pollution of surface or groundwater to minimize erosion and sediment and to minimize changes in groundwater levels, increase runoff and potential for flooding. That's not applicable. Adequacy of the methods to ensure the use will not constitute a nuisance by reason of unacceptable level of air or water pollution, excessive noise, or visually labyrint structures and accessories.
In fact, I'd just say in both this and in the previous one, it simply meets that criteria. I don't think we have to get fancier than that. It's applicable, but.
Right. Okay. Is there any other conditions? We've already discussed the setback, the property lines, method of construction with helical coils. Is there anything else? So can we make a motion to approve with the said criteria?
You can, and then I have, with that one condition, and then everything according to plans is built into special permit.
Okay. Motion?
Make a motion to approve special permit for Grayson DeWitt and Laura Fisher DeWitt for construction of a new garage or pre-existing non-conforming garage.
Would you just, to the record, be willing to add on with conditions?
With conditions. Thank you. That's
fantastic.
All right, a motion's been made. You have a second?
A second.
Get a tie. All right, a motion has been made in second. With show of hands for approval. Showing 5 hands of yes, the motion carries. All right, with that, we will, let me give Dylan a chance to write all this up. And we will then, it will be filed with the city clerk. There'll be a 20-day appeal period. I'm sure you're all well aware. At which point it will be filed with the city, you'll be received notice and you can file it with the Hampshire County deeds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. And, good luck with the construction, Mr. K. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our next hearing is in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. We'll be
And that
doing
will
the 40B.
The 40B. And then we will have another one at the end of the month for the other hearing, normal hearings.
Yep, the other 3 that we did not hear tonight.
Okay. Yeah. Motion for adjournment? All right. Any objections? So moved.
No.
All right.
All right. Looks like we are adjourned.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.